Into life. Welcome to our second season of Advent. Welcome. And as you know, I get recorded so that way people can see me, so we're being recorded, and I want to say every now and then I'll have to look over here, so forgive me. Today is Advent, and we're getting closer to Christmas. Woo-hoo! How many people got their tree up, and how many people are getting excited? I am. All right. Not only for our little babies or grandchildren, whatever you want to become, or celebration with family, friends, and hope, but for Advent and for the Christ. Or, I woke up today in faith knowing that I am alive, healthy, whole, and I have a purpose. God bless it. These stinking thinkings that we have in the dark energies, when we get closer to the light, what happens? They tend to get back into you, and they try to persuade you the way to think back into negative thoughts. Just like our second candle in faith. We're getting closer in our mental cabinet. Let's move any obstacles that we have in our way. Let's throw them out the window. Take that right now, if you wouldn't mind. Let's get closer to the light. The sermon today is a little bit about faith. And you're saying, how? Can you imagine? I married this man September 16th, 1978. And I know you all can sit there and testify when you got married too. Some are new, some aren't married, or they just got married and have been married for a long time, or some people their marriage has divorced, or maybe it's just not going right. Whatever your story is, it's okay. But it's about faith a little bit, and that's about marriage. Can you imagine being married? And sometimes it's wonderful, and sometimes it ain't. But can you imagine being married 4 times to somebody? I don't know you, but today, I know Mike can attest to me about this. Some days I'm sure I get on his nerves so bad he wants to divorce me. And I'm not saying that in a bad light, but we all can go through obstacles. And some of you, I'm saying the significant others, you don't necessarily have to have that ring on that finger. It might be a communication, or it might be a relationship that you're going through. You can attest to what I'm saying. But can you imagine being married 4 different times? Well, there was a king that was. And I'm going to say there's 2 different stories I want to talk to you about. The first story, then you can relate to, and then the second sermon we'll give it testimony. So, being married 4 different times at first. There was a king, and he had 4 wives, and he found out that he was living his first wife, was this beautiful, and he forgot about her after he got married to the second wife. And then the 3rd wife came, and then the 4th wife came. Okay, so he found out, and he was living a good life, and he had so many, many children, and he forgot about all his wives because he was starting to live. He found out he was going to die. I'm going to die. I just don't want to die by myself. I got 4 wives. I'm going to ask one of those wives. Surely one of them will follow me to the grave. He goes, I'm going to go to my favorite wife, number 4. Surely she loves me, and I favor her with all the gifts, and I buy her the precious stones, and I make sure she's right in front of me when we walk down this session to go to our throne room. Surely she'll follow me in the grave. Honey, I'm dying. Will you follow me to the grave? Absolutely not, she says. What are you, crazy? I can't do that. Oh, I don't want his favorite. I don't want to hurt her feelings. Surely she must carry on for our children. Honey, I've got kids. Surely I'm wrong. I should let her follow on. So he rose up to the 3rd wives and said, would you follow me to the grave? Absolutely not, I will not. My goodness gracious, he says. I got 2 more options here. That's okay. Why can't you follow me? Well, I just can't. I have things to do. I ain't done living yet. Okay, I got 2 more chances here. So he goes up to the 2nd wife and he goes, will you follow me to the grave? Absolutely not. Man, he goes, I only got 1 more wife to go through this, and then what's going to happen? Okay, he says. Then he goes to this 4th wife and he thinks he's going to get a no out of the answer because he's forgot about her. But it was her favorite. Remember, well, let's set it up. That was her favorite along when he first got married. Everything is devoted on that wife. Would you follow me to the grave, my dear? You know what she says? Yes, I will. And he goes, He falls down on his knees and he goes, wait a minute, surely, he says, I didn't treat you well. I ignored you. I married 3 other wives and had children. And you're going to, only one, none of them will follow me to the grave except you? Absolutely. Why will you follow me to the grave? Because I love you. I've always loved you. That's like Jesus. The undying love of Jesus. God. He loves us no matter what. You can think of your first, the fourth wife as being pride and ego. What do we put out there at first? Ego comes before pride, and that's the most person that I go and I look up every mirror on Sundays, and I put my makeup on, and I get dressed up to be a reverend. And my garbs, that's my fourth wife. The third wife might be emotional. Oh, I'm doing great and I have a cold and I'm lying. The second wife might be your children, how much you really love, or your spouse. But what we forget is the God's love. That's the first wife. The God's love, we forget about that. We take that for granted. We take that for granted all the time, that I'm going to wake up every morning. And then at a funeral, then what happens? That's why I put that there. Then we start changing our ways of thinking, I should do this. I should do that. Second story about a husband and a wife. Let me set this up. This man, he lost his wife and he was living and he had a company. And he got lost on his way. How many people can attest that we get lost on our ways every day? I do. I can take him for granted so much. Like I said, I'm married to my fourth wife instead of my first wife sometimes. The same thing in this story. I got home one night as my wife Amy was serving dinner, and I held her hand, I said, I want a divorce. And she didn't seem to be annoyed by my words. Instead, she softly asked me why. I avoided the question. This made her upset. So I admitted that I was having an affair with a woman named Jane at work, and I was no longer in love with her. The next day, with a deep sigh of guilt, I drafted a divorce agreement stating that she could keep the house, the car, 30% of my company, and she tore it up in pieces as she glanced at it. The woman that I have married and spent 10 years of my life with had become a stranger to me. I felt sorry for her, that I wasted her time, resources, and energy, but I could not take back what I have done. She finally cried out loud in front of me, we took vows to each other. She was heartbroken, which was what I had expected to see. And then the idea of force, that I was going to divorce her, felt more real to me. Then she reacted the way it needed to be acted. I got home very late that next day, and I had spent some time with Jane, and I opened the door to find Amy writing at the table. She presented me divorce conditions. She didn't want anything from me, but her request for the next 30 days that we both live as normal as life as possible. That's pretty good, ain't it? Her reasons were simple. Our son had his exams this month, and she didn't want to disturb him with a broken marriage. Sounds reasonable to you, don't it? Huh? What do you think so far? Also, she asked me to recall how I have carried her up on our wedding day. Can you recall how you picked me up? Can you imagine hearing that? And bringing me to the front door, or bringing me to our changers. She always asked me to recall that, and she wanted me to carry her on our wedding, like we did on our wedding day. She requested that she carry me out of our bedroom and to the front door every morning for a month's duration. That's the only thing she wanted. I thought she was going a bit crazy, but the last days together made it more bearable, and I accepted her odd request. We were both pretty clumsy at first when I carried her out the first day. But our son was joyfully clapping his hands, singing, Daddy's holding Mommy in his arms. His words triggered a sense of pain in me. Why do you think there was a sense of pain in there? Maybe guilt. Maybe that was because he's no longer married to the first wife. He's married to the third wife or the second wife, whatever wife it is, but there's there. So he carried her from the bedroom, the living room, and then he closed the door. So she closed her eyes and softly said, "Don't tell our son about the divorce." I nodded and put her down outside the door. "I won't." Life continued. A month later, we were still clumsy the second day as she leaned in my chest, and I could smell the fragrance of her perfume on her shirt. I realized that I haven't really looked at this woman for a long time. She wasn't young no more. There were fine wrinkles on her face, and her hair was graying. Our marriage has taken a toll on her. For a minute, I wondered, what have I done to her? Now he's starting to see the first wife. On the fourth day, when she lifted her up, I sensed the intimacy returning back to me. This was a woman I gave 10 years of my life to in her life to me. She started leaning into my chest a little closer, and I'm not as clumsy anymore. On the fifth and sixth day, I realized that our intimacy was coming and growing back again. It became easier for me to carry her, and I wasn't as clumsy. As the months slipped by, I suddenly realized she was getting very thin. One morning it hit me how she was burying so much pain and the bitterness in her heart. And without realizing that, I was thinking about it. I reached out and I touched her hand. And our son came in that moment and said, "Daddy, it's time to carry Mom out." To him, seeing the father carrying out his mother has become a ritual part of everyday life. And it meant something to him. The son is maybe the first wife. My wife gestured our son to come closer. She hugged him so tightly, I turned my face away because I was afraid I might start changing my mind. I carried her in my arms, and her hand naturally wrapped around my neck, just like it was supposed to on our wedding day. I held her body tight, just like our wedding day. She leaned into me. It was no longer clumsy. It was like the old shoe that I loved her right away. Now on the last day, when I held her in my arms, I could hardly move a step. I knew what I had to do. I drove to Jane's place. I walked upstairs, and I said, "I'm sorry, Jane. I do not want a divorce. I love my wife. I can't do this no more." It all came clear to me. I had carried my wife into our home on our wedding day, and I told her, "Until death do us part." I got home in my mind with flowers in my hand and a big smile on my face. Can you imagine now, I once set this start now, he's been doing this for 30 days, and he's realizing that he really loves his wife now, just like his first wife. The God presence with him when he made that vow to God, and God made a vow to us that he's never going to separate from us. He's going to give birth every year in Advent. That's the first wife. He's no longer going to divorce his first wife. He's understanding his first wife because he did some stuff wrong, not she. But he was looking at his own mental cabinets. He had to remove things out of darkness to the light, just like the second Advent. It's in faith. Vows, faith, love. And then he's getting home and he thinks the flowers in the hands and a big smile on his face. But when he got to his door, there was people around and his wife was dead. It turns out that she's been fighting cancer for a few months now, and she never told him because he was too busy with Jane. He's too busy with everything else, his company, and he forgot his first wife. How many times have we done that? We can forget things. He didn't even notice. Only when he started hanging up on her, he could notice that she was getting a little thin. She knew she was a strong one, that she was going to die soon, so she didn't want to say anything. She wanted happiness for him, and she wanted happiness for her son. She knew she was going to die soon, that's why her final request was important to her. She wanted our son to see her loving husband and her dad and Dell, and to keep the promise, death do us part. So he could look up to the Father and he could teach her lessons of what he needs to learn. Faith, healing, love. Don't we really have responsibility to our children? Don't we really have responsibilities to yourself to teach your mate to listen, to love? Isn't there vows that we have on our wedding day to do this? Isn't there when God gave us birth, isn't there vows that we take to get closer to him? He has not abandoned us. And death do us part. Marriage is like faith. Marriage is like a love. It's a contract that God made to us. Advent's a contract that we made with God. His undying light that constantly shines. Constantly, it's in our life. It's in our planet. And we think it's going to be here forever. That's the first wife. We take advantage of our first wife. We take advantage of everything. And then this Advent, I want you to move the darkness into the light. These are powerful words, and maybe you didn't like it today, or maybe you did. It's okay. It had to be said. That's how I got my point across, and that's how Spirit wanted it to be. And I listened to it. In this Advent season, let's not take Jane for granted. Let's not take yourself for granted. You are Jane. How, you say? The divine purpose, the light within you, is whatever it is. She was strong. She was courageous. She didn't know. She didn't want to hinder anybody by saying anything. So what do we do with this during Advent season? When we say to you, how are you doing? You might say, oh, I'm okay. Are you okay? Maybe you're hurting inside. Maybe you're doing some stuff that you need to have a prayer on. You forget about yourself. The God light within you. God knows. You're not lying to anybody. He already knows it. So when I say to me, am I okay today? Well, today I'd like to have a little prayer done for me. I feel a little under weather. Could you pray with me? Or could you smile at me? I need a little smile today. I do need a smile today. Could you smile for me? Knowing that the sermon's fine? Great. Blessings be. You too out there. And the third Advent season is Rejoice and Joy. That'll be the pink candle that we'll have next year. We're getting closer to the light. Now the second sermon I wish I could take for, but I can't because it was on the internet and it was the most beautiful sermon I ever come across. It was a blessing that I stumbled upon it. It was not by accident, trust me. It was supposed to happen the way it was. And faith, love, hope is in marriage. Faith was in Jesus, and Mary was going with their son. They were married. They had that perfect marriage. That's why I went with this sermon. They had faith that they were going to make it to Bethlehem for this Advent. They had faith that she wasn't going to give birth. They were going to make it. They had faith in their marriage. They had faith that God's bounded them together and glue and stuck them together, and that nothing was going to go wrong with them. That's faith. We can breathe. We're having faith right now by not knowing the air is existing, but we know it's there because we furnish on it by breathing. You can't see it. You can't hear it. But it's God by faith that we have to have it that we're breathing, right? Same thing during this Advent season. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for this, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Now this is the other portion.